The Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen, grab your seat, let's have a blast. At the Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast.
Right, Neal, I have been reading up all about you and doing my research.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I've got loads of questions for you. Yeah, uh-oh is the right response right there. My first question is, how do you pronounce your surname?
Okay, that's a really good opener there. And yeah, it can be challenging. It's Swiss Italian. So there are two ways of pronouncing it. So you can either pronounce it the way that my dad has taught me to pronounce it because he's lazy and didn't want to brush up on his Italian. So we've always told people it's Veglio.
Veglio.
But if you're going to be native and authentic about it, if you're going to go to, the Swiss Alps, you're probably going to want to say Veglio.
Veglio. Okay.
Veglio.
Veglio.
Yes.
Veglio.
And there's a small town in the north of Switzerland that's named Veglio, where we apparently originate from. So there we go. A little bonus bit of trivia for you as well.
Get you named after a Swiss town. Who knew?
There are worse things in life.
Well, welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast, Neal. Thank you very much for coming along.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I've stalked you on LinkedIn, as I do with most of my guests, it has to be said. And I come across interesting people and I think, ooh, I'd really like to find out more about them. And then I read through your whole LinkedIn spiel and the millions of jobs that you've had. It's like,
yeah, sorry about that.
It's all right. And I thought, this guy's really, really interesting because you're not interview fodder if you've had the same job for 30 years, because that's probably a bit dull for listeners. To be honest.
Question one, question two, goodbye. Yeah, I get it.
Are you employable? No, therefore I'll interview you.
You've nailed me straight away, Rebecca. That's it. That's the real subtext there. Neal is unemployable.
Because the first couple of jobs in your profile, I was reading it was like, I was only there for a year, and I thought, I used to be a recruiter, so I know what that means. Neal was a pain in the arse and wouldn't follow instructions.
That's the interesting thing here. So let's start this one straight off the bat. So one of my favorite things, I worked in the radio industry. So where this comes down to is I had a career in the media from the age of about 17, and it started when I was on work experience for a radio station. And I mean, honestly, I'd wanted to work in radio since I was a wee bairn, as some of your listeners might refer to it locally. But yeah, it was essentially a case of the radio industry went through a massive period of evolving, essentially, not really knowing what it was. And I used to get talked about on what they called the radio forums. It was a website called Media UK. And you'd have people in there just gossiping, essentially, because the industry massively thrived on gossip. There's a lot of backbiting and in-talk and all that sort of stuff. And there was a thread on there that said, Neal Veglio, is he the most fired man in radio? And my favorite thing was always going on there and actually saying, just to clarify, I have never once been fired from a radio station ever. And the truth of it was that radio, because the way that radio is, it was constantly being bought, sold, rebranding. And as a result of that, what you would find one of my biggest jobs I ever had, I was made redundant from, and I was absolutely devastated. And it was a chap called Bruno Brooks.
Yeah, I remember Bruno Brooks.
You remember Bruno? Yeah, good afternoon. It's the top 40 of Radio 1.
Yeah.
And Bruno, absolutely brilliant visionary in terms of the media, but he just didn't seem to be able to get it sorted in terms of, the platform that we worked on. It was called Storm Live. He was pioneering, and like all startups and all pioneering ventures, there's always that whole risk that it could go wrong. And unfortunately, the launch of Storm Live coincided with the big .com bubble burst of the year 2001.
Right. Okay.
So I became a victim as did many of my colleagues, of, okay, we've just invested a year and a half in this. Where's it going? Oh, back to unemployment. So never actually fired for insubordination apart from once.
Okay.
There was one time.
Do tell.
Oh, I mean, that was just actually technically twice, because the first time, here comes the truth, is unraveling. The first time was I worked for a radio station in Essex. And to say that it was a bit weird in terms of the setup, the chief executive was married to the managing director, and there were all kind of weird things going on with their private life. I won't go into too much detail. Just let's just be honest about it and say that they enjoyed regular annual holidays to hedonism in Jamaica. And if you know what happens at hedonism in Jamaica, you'll probably put two and two together and figure out what kind of toxic working environment that was.
Well, it's Jeffrey Epstein all over again, isn't it? It's horrendous. Jesus Christ.
Yes, it wasn't the best environment to work in, not most professional. So that was a case of, I got to the point where I actually managed myself out of the company because they wouldn't fire me. So I had to do whatever I could to try and get myself out, which was invariably just making it quite clear, I no longer want to work here. Please get rid of me.
Yeah.
It took me a while.
Or invite me to Jamaica. Either way.
It'd make a great bonus. Yeah, Christmas bonus. So there was that one. And then I think the second time I worked, again, a very similarly toxic environment at a radio station in Reading. And they were all up to no good. That's all I'll say. Right. So, yeah, I got sort of managed out there as well. But yeah, other than that, it was all redundancies. It wasn't that bad a point, Rebecca, honestly.
Okay. All right. No, not as bad. I first got sacked when I worked for a Swiss. There's the Swiss connection. A Swiss bakery in a posh part of South Manchester, run by a woman who used to commute to Switzerland to get her hair cut. Okay, that's how far up her own backside she was. Wow. And I was busy slicing the vanilla slices out the back. And she just told me off about something. I can't remember. It was probably eating the custard for the vanilla slices because it's my favourite thing.
Gotta be done.
She overheard me call her a silly cow. And I got fired on the spot. I was like, oops.
But what a way to go.
Blaze of glory. Anyway, so you credit yourself, and I love this, as the inventor of the podcast in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, it's total marketing garnish, isn't it? Let's be honest about it.
Though.
Technically, it's true. So, yeah, really, really long story shortened down, because it would be boring if you don't get the geekiness, the technicalities of podcasting. So, podcasting is based on a syndication platform called RSS, and nowadays, everything's so much easier. You get a hosting account and you upload your audio to it, and they literally take care of the rest. They create an RSS feed for you. Then all you've got to do is manually upload that RSS feed to a couple of apps: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and one or two others. The rest of them, they're pretty much all done from Apple Podcasts then. So it's much easier than it was. But back in the day, you had to literally create an RSS feed yourself, which meant you had to sort of learn how to code to a certain extent. I'm not a coder. I had to literally read, blog posts and things, and sort of do a lot of research into how you do this. But before this was even a thing, before, the whole encoding audio to an RSS feed was a thing, in the year 2001, I had the idea of uploading my radio show to the internet because, I was based in the UK. I did the 2 till 6 p.m. drive show. Biggest show on the station, honestly. We had celebrity jocks. We had a chap called Joe Absalom that was known for his role in EastEnders. He played Matthew Rose in EastEnders, the son of Martin Kemp's character. So he had the biggest storyline in soap history for a good 3 months. So like the papers were talking about him because obviously he took revenge on his father in the show. So huge star rising. And he came to work at this radio station, and he was like our big high profile name that was going to launch this radio station again, Storm Live with Bruno Brooks. And actually, what Bruno figured out was all this money he was spending on these celebrities. Actually, the people listening to Storm Live, they didn't really care about celebrities. They wanted personalities, and we had a global audience. And our biggest audience was actually America. And I was thinking, well, yeah, absolutely. It was because it was all new. Because, back then, I mean, we had Sky Digital Radio, which was starting to sort of pick up a bit of pace. Back then, you had maybe 20 channels on Sky. Now it's something like 300 channels.
Way too many.
DAB wasn't really a thing back then. It was all done through satellite. So, long story short, I was figuring out that probably 70% of my potential audience wasn't able to hear me because I was essentially their breakfast show. And so it was a case of, well, okay, how can I get these people that are obviously my target audience, how can I get them hearing my show when essentially I'm coming off air as they're starting to listen to the radio in their offices or at work or wherever? And so I uploaded my entire show from, that afternoon. I'd put it on the website. And this lasted for, I think, 2 weeks before it crashed the entire radio station website. And I got a phone call from Bruno in the middle of the night saying, Neal, you're no longer to upload your show. But it got me into that sort of that mindset of, right, okay, this, because I was looking at the figures. I was looking at the download figures from my website page that I had my presenter profile on. And we were getting more downloads of the show online than were listening on the streams on, the main website radio player.
Back in 2001.
Back in 2001.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah. So I thought there's something in this. And that's when I started to look into it and had the idea of, well, uploading audio to the internet, that's a good idea, isn't it? Because then anybody in the world can listen. And so for me, Adam Curry, the actual attributed inventor of the podcast, would argue with this. But
obviously.
I think, of course he would. It's marketing garnish. That for me is indicative of, well, I basically invented podcasting in the UK.
Oh, well done. Congratulations. And I thank you for it because I am obsessed with podcasts.
Brilliant.
And that's why when I spoke to you the other week, and by the way, to all the listeners out there, Neal has been so incredibly helpful to professionalize my podcast, which has been run on very amateur lines for about a year and a half, nearly 2 years. But I'm now upping my game because I just find them so inspirational. And I listen to everything from Danny Robbins's Uncanny. He's currently running a series called The Witch Farm, the most haunted house in the UK with the most exorcisms. Fabulous.
Wow.
All the way through to, really sciencey, geeky stuff. I like a lot about neuroscience and I just love the variety. Who do you listen to and where do you get your inspiration from?
I like my music taste, honestly. I listen to anything and everything. One of my all-time favorite podcasts is a show called WTF from a guy called Mark Maron. Now, Mark Maron is a stand-up comedian in America, but he might argue that he was the inventor of the podcast because he was kind of the first mainstream podcast before, when Serial wasn't even a vision in someone's head. Yeah, he was doing WTF. He's probably most famous for having interviewed Obama while Obama was president. Yeah. Wow. Which was obviously a massive deal because back then, people didn't go on podcasts. It's like, what's a podcast? Yeah. So he was essentially the first podcast that got legitimized by the president. The leader of the free world went on his show and talked, very, very candidly about life as president and his family and, what being president meant and all that sort of stuff. I remember, because I'm a big avid follower of Mark's anyway on social media. And I remember seeing pictures that he was uploading to Instagram and all the social media of the private security guys coming in and sweeping his house and saying, you've got to get out of your house for the next 3 hours. It's not your house now. It's the president's HQ. He's like, oh man, okay, I'll go get a coffee then. But it's just like things like that, because what he's doing is he's obviously got access to some pretty big names who will say things on his show that they wouldn't necessarily say to the press because they know they're going to get misquoted, and Mark's very above board. So, it's everything from his show to, I listen to a lot of stuff about meditation, manifestation, business. you name it. If it's a subject that I'm interested in, you can guarantee I've got at least 3 podcasts about it in my library, and industry podcasts, of course, because you'll know you're a business coach, so you'll know exactly how. Just because you're a coach doesn't mean you know everything, and there's always room to learn. And so for me, it's like, okay, so I'm probably one of the most knowledgeable people in my space in the world. Yes, I am. But I can always learn from others. And, to have that arrogance of, well, what some random guy in Detroit thinks about podcasting is irrelevant because I know, no, actually, this guy might bring some new ideas to the table, which I can try and test and measure, and you'll know yourself. It's not, it's not an actual fact until you've proven it to yourself. So yeah, it's real kind of eclectic mix of knowledge going into these ears into this brain.
So
this tiny brain.
What I'm hearing, Neal, is that you have a thirst for knowledge, and you're curious. You have an attitude of curiosity, and you're into manifestation. Have you done any NLP training?
Now, NLP is something that absolutely fascinates me. I guess the closest I have come to NLP training is reading Tony Robbins.
Okay.
I've read maybe 2 or 3 Tony Robbins books. And I have worked with an NLP practitioner on a podcast as well. And the short answer is no. The longer answer is I dabble with a little bit of research into it. It's something that I am fascinated when I've got more time. I will definitely look more deeply into it. But yeah, I find the subject fascinating, really.
Well, I did all my training with Dr. Richard Bandler.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm a licensed trainer of NLP. So I train practitioners and master practitioners. So offline, we can go into huge amounts of detail about that. And it's really fascinating. And you can't learn it from a book. You can't learn it from YouTube. You have to be in the room and you have to experience it. And that's one of the transformational properties of it, actually. But we'll come back to manifestation. So now a lot of people think it's woo-woo. I personally don't. And there's lots of science behind manifestation. Tell me what your experience has been, and if you can relate it to business.
Oh, I can 100% relate it to business straight off the bat. I can tell you a story that actually, most of us will relate to, the height of COVID, March 2020, not having. So just to really, bring a little bit of backstory where it's relevant, before I was doing this full time, I was a consultant in podcasting for the radio business. I still had contacts, so I was using that. But my bread and butter was... essentially, I was a wedding DJ.
No way! Cool. Oh my God. That's a whole podcast in itself.
So, I mean, it was events. I was doing, stage work for corporates. I was doing the sort of the front of house. I was doing the emceeing. I was hospitality essentially for hire. So if, a hotel was opening up for an event, I was the guy on the microphone entertaining the football, that sort of thing. But yeah, a large part of it, I used to do the Christmas light switch on at my local shopping mall in Reading, the Broad Street Mall. And I'd be getting to work with people like Jedward. It is great fun.
No, never mind. Hey,
no, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. But I was doing the events industry for a good, so straight off the back of radio, really. I sort of quit radio in 2017 and then went into events full time. And for 3 years, it was going okay. And then, of course, COVID happened.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, the entire events industry just wiped out.
Yeah.
So the way where this relates to manifestation was I needed to pay that because I didn't furlough. It was irrelevant to me.
Yeah,
I was running an events business. I wasn't entitled to any furlough at this point. I never did get any, actually. So I was completely relying on savings and essentially trying to sort of find a way of getting some money coming in. My experience of manifestation, which really blew my socks off, that told me that this was a thing. I needed £501 to pay a bill that if I didn't pay it, I was going to be in a lot of trouble.
Right.
And so I thought, how am I going to make this £501? Oh, God. And you'll probably know yourself with the manifestation thing, isn't it? It's less about trying to figure out how to make the £501. It's about telling the universe you need the £501. and let the universe do its thing.
Absolutely.
And once I'd finally let go, I'd sort of lost the will to live. I was in the back garden and just, as we all were in March of 2020,
Totally.
getting some rays and reading.
I had my head banging against my desk whilst my husband was in the back garden. Yeah.
Bless. It was literally a case of in the back garden. I was like, I'm going to do a little bit of meditation. And some point in this meditation, it just literally said, let go. Stop trying to control. So I thought, okay, well, let's give it a go with the manifestation thing then. I'm not going to manifest business coming in. I'm not going to manifest how I'm going to make this happen. I'm just going to manifest, I need this £501 today. What happens next week, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, right, you are not going to believe this. You might, because you believe in manifestation, but your listener might not do. I looked at my Gmail inbox the next day. I kid you not, no word of a lie, some random thing I'd applied for maybe 3 years before, some music grant that I'd applied for. And it said, you've been accepted for an emergency COVID-19 recovery grant to get you through the next, the hospitality industry done. This is for you to invest however you need, whether you need to pay bills or you want to do training or whatever. £501.27.
Yes.
I mean, how do you explain that? Nobody's been able to explain that to me. And to this day, I thought, well, they're going to come back to me once we're out of this. They're going to come back to me and they're going to ask for the money back. And I was absolutely fully prepared to pay it back. But I reached out to them and I said, look, okay, really appreciated the time. £501.27 saved me in COVID. What do I need to do now? Is there paperwork I've got to fill in? And we're like, oh, it's £501. It was a gift. It was a gift to you because you needed it. You were in the industry.
Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Insane.
Yeah.
And it's happened since in more subtle ways, certainly in this industry. I've had clients where they've just suddenly disappeared. They've gone, they don't understand marketing, and they've just, wrapped up. And I've gone, oh God, what am I going to do now? And then, I've manifested, I've said, well, this one client, if I can get 2 clients in their place, that allows me to scale to the next thing. Lo and behold, the next day I'm getting emails coming in saying, don't even need to do a discovery call. Let's just start. I want to start. Here's my money. Take my money. Let's get. And I'm just like, wow, this really does work. It's incredible.
It really does. And it's the letting go part that I think people struggle with. The best analogy I've ever had is from my yoga teacher, who says, just don't force it, just let it go. And you invite the move to occur. And it's the same with life and business and love and relationships and health and all the rest of it, is that you invite things into your life and then you carry on doing things. You don't just sit in a room and do nothing, but you carry on doing things. And then you're absolutely right. It appears and you look back and you go, oh, yeah, I did ask for that. It might not appear in the way you think it's going to appear, but it appears nevertheless. And people will call it coincidence. They'll call it whatever. It doesn't really matter, but it absolutely works. The key, though, is you're right, that first let go of the outcome, actually. No, it's a really weird combination of knowing your outcome and then letting it go. Strange, isn't it? So, okay, you've not looked back, because when I looked at your profile, it said March 2020, and I thought, oh yeah, he's had to pivot like everybody else.
Pivot.
Pivot. But it's going exceptionally well, Neal. Where do your clients come from? What kind of sectors? What kind of industries?
It's really interesting. So I would say if I had to share with you my biggest KPI, I would say it's probably LinkedIn, honestly. Okay. That is my biggest lead generator. And I think the reason, and interestingly, I had a conversation with somebody about this the other day. The website, I have a website and it's a constant work in progress. And I think it's been a real epiphany recently. The one place where I am absolutely myself is LinkedIn.
Right.
The website is very much kind of telling the customer or the client what they want to hear.
Yeah.
It has been, because a website is usually a place of fact, isn't it? It's a place of sharing the insight, but sort of being real with people. And so what I'm actually doing now, I'm in a process, actually, funnily enough, as we speak, of taking a little bit of what I do on LinkedIn and putting it on the website, because I think what people want to hear is actually some reality, some truth. Yeah. They don't want to be told what they think they want to know. They want to be told, actually, you talking about Anchor not being a great, a great platform to use for your podcast. You talking about the Blue Yeti microphone, not being the best choice of a microphone. You talking about investing money in gurus that are going to charge you $1,000 to get you into the top 50. That's not going to help your podcast or your business in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's what I'm trying to do now, is I'm trying to sort of take what works on LinkedIn, where people are seeing what I'm saying. They're seeing me disagreeing with other practitioners, not in a nasty way, because I'd never, ever try and destroy someone else's business. That's not the way I work. In fact, when people come to me and I can't work with them, I'll always recommend my competitors, because for me, it's a case of, well, if I can't work with them for whatever reason, that doesn't mean that someone else should be, and it's all about them at the end of the day. If I can get them a solution, that means working with my competitor, that's fine. And I think that's why my LinkedIn works, because I'm being really blooming honest with people and saying, it's not about the money. I really genuinely, come on, we've got to pay the bills. Food's got to be on the table. Yeah. But anything on top of that, I want people to succeed with their podcasts in their own way. And if that means working with me or working with somebody else, I really don't care, as long as you get the result. And I think that resonates with people. And I think that's why on LinkedIn, I tend to get a lot more people coming to me with a bit more trust, because they see what I'm posting on LinkedIn, and they see that I'm basically committing career suicide on there, but honestly, every sort of couple of weeks. You know what I mean?
I nearly posted something today, and I had to delete it because I thought, this is a career-ending post, so I had to delete it.
Now I need to know what it was.
I can't tell you. Anyway, so...
Those are my favorite types of posts, to be honest.
I know, it was like, plus I'd already posted today, and I was like, no, don't post twice in one day, and don't make the second one a career-ending post. Go away and make yourself a cup of tea.
I'd have posted 3 times, and 2 of them would have been career-ending. Otherwise, where's the fun?
Oh dear, no, it was too political. It was a political
one of those.
Potato.
Yes.
It's a hot potato.
My favorite.
Like, ooh. Anyway, so I digress. Okay, so I came to you because there are other podcast services available, as the BBC would like to say. But I came to you because you were just normal and you were human. Plus, you connected with Joe Watson, the amazing copywriter, who is also normal and human. And I think that, and I've said this before on this podcast, the one upside of COVID was that it made LinkedIn a more human place to be. And it stopped being stuffy and corporate and, quite frankly, a bit dull, to be honest.
Unusable, I would say. Absolutely.
Yeah. But there are people who complain. There are people who say, this shouldn't be on LinkedIn and you're not allowed to be human. And do you know what do you say to, I know what I say to that, but what do you say to that, Neal?
I say that the people that say this isn't Facebook, don't post any personal stuff, they don't understand business, frankly. They don't understand marketing. They don't understand branding. They don't understand in general. These are the people that will be first to complain that they're not getting leads, they're not generating business. People will go to their competitors, and the reason being because they're like we talked about, let go. They don't let go. They present. I saw this myself in the radio industry and in the media in general. You get 2 layers of people that the ones that do really well in the media are those that are really honest. That's why Chris Moyles was such a huge success. That's why Chris Evans was such a huge success, because what they were doing was they were taking what their peers were doing, which was turning up, putting on the fake voice. Yeah, good morning, 9:12. It's all about my voice, and they thought that's what broadcasting was about, having a really sexy voice and, talking about showbiz stuff and being super slick and, pretending to be something you're not. Whereas The Chris's, as I call them, they understood, actually, our listeners don't talk like that. So why are we talking like that? Our listeners talk in a normal tone, in the normal voice, and about normal things. And when they understood that and they started being silly and doing silly things and saying silly stuff, audiences lapped it up. And I think that's what you have to remember as a business owner or anybody that's working, representing your brand on social media or anywhere for that matter. Just let go, be silly, be fun. Because imagine it, the way that the analogy I always use, Rebecca, is imagine you're going to an in-person networking event, okay? And you got someone that's standing in the corner who's, putting out business cards and talking in a very serious way and holding their coffee cup and being all very formal. And then you got another group where they're just laughing. I don't know about you, but I know where I'm going first, right?
Yeah. That's me. I'm usually making them laugh because I said something highly inappropriate and they've gone, you can't say that. I'm like, oh shit, I just did. Sorry.
My favorite types of people, honestly.
No, you're right. Good. Now, where are you taking the business? Because at the moment, is it just you, or do you have, a team of cast of thousands supporting you? How's it working?
I wish.
Yeah,
thousands. I wish. So, in all honesty, the business it's me. It's essentially what I call a one-man band plus. In other words, It's me. I'm the heart and soul of the business. Ironically, talking about letting go, one of my biggest barriers has been letting go. I am very much a perfectionist. It's my own downfall, but I do outsource. I have people that work for me, and in terms of the editing side of things, in terms of some of the marketing stuff, the transcriptions, all that sort of stuff, all the things that really I don't make a difference to. Anybody can edit out ums and ahs. Anybody can structure an episode the way it needs to be. So I do have people that work with me in terms of, taking the audio and cleaning it up so that when I get it at the other end, it's ready for me to put the spit and polish on it, make it sound good, make it, tweak it, and then optimize it for the platform. So it's a bit of both. My long-term plan is my dream for next year. This is definitely a 5-year plan thing. My dream is to scale it. Yeah. I want to turn Podnose into less a podcasting agency and more a podcasting standard. Which eventually I could franchise out to other podcasting people that want to do their own thing. They want to be in charge of their own destinies, have their own clients, but use the Podnose framework to apply that to make sure that their podcasts have got more chance of success. So that's kind of, amazing. I want my ideal thing is, and again, it's committing career suicide, but what I want to do is share what I do with other podcasters, because from my point of view, I don't care who gets the money at the end of the day. What I want to do is be able to listen to better podcasts. And if that's the ultimate goal, then that's what I want to achieve. And I think, that's the first step to that is to sharing that knowledge. So, one of my plans is to, set up some sort of framework, some sort of group coaching system where people can come in and they can sort of, learn a bit more about what I do, the difference that I make and how I approach things. And hopefully then they can apply it to their own businesses.
Amazing. Well, we were told 4 years ago, why are you sharing all your intellectual property on a learning platform? This is career suicide. And I went, no, the more people that know this stuff, the more businesses will have better cultures, people will have better working lives, and the world will be a happier, fluffier place. And actually businesses will make more money that they can reinvest and employ more people. So I'm right there with you. We have literally, that our whole reason for existing is that we share what we know. So I now teach business coaches and consultants to do exactly what I do and to earn the money that I earn. And Nick, my brother, who I founded the business with, we do the same. And it actually is the way of the world now. You can't hold on to things anymore. Sharing is caring. But you're right. I think that's a brilliant idea. Absolutely.
Well, my
fantastic.
take on it, Rebecca, honestly, is that, you can hold on to things. You can put things behind a paywall. And I've seen it, and I've seen my competitors doing it. And I think the problem is people seem to think that things like YouTube don't exist.
Yeah,
I know. It's like you might get a lesser quality version of my information if you look it up on YouTube, but you'll get it. My value add is not in telling you the basics. My value add is telling you how you make sure that the basics work. And I think that's the big difference maker is ring fencing your ideas and your knowledge. It's, yes, you can make maybe 99p. Per person from putting that sort of thing behind a paywall. But in terms of your credibility, for a start, in terms of you're paying it forward, like we talked about manifestation, how the universe works. I mean, what better way to get the universe to take notice of you and give you all those nice things that we all talk about we can't have, but to share what you've got with the world, no catches, no caveats, just doing it. And the way these things work is, anybody, I mean, I know you told me, you had somebody that wanted you on as a guest and then they realized that you did exactly the same thing as them and they were like, oh no, hoarding my information and keeping you away. It's absolutely the wrong thing to do because, if you've got two business coaches, you and somebody else, you can, you're guaranteed 99% of the people that listen to their podcast will only work with him. But there's going to be a 1% of his podcast that like him, but don't want to work with him. So that's where you then come in. And this is what people don't get is don't hide anything from anybody because people are smart and they'll find out anyway.
They certainly will. Right. Last question, Neal. If your business had a personality or character, how would you describe it? Or who would it be?
Oh, that's a thinker. Nice. Okay. So is this someone that's existing, real, living?
Could be
anything.
Could be anything. Could be dead, historical, fictional, whatever.
I would say if my business took human form, it would most likely be Kenny Everett. And I'm sure the reasons are obvious.
Absolutely. Because he started in radio, didn't he?
Yeah, he was a radio legend. So the reason you and I are talking, honestly, Rebecca, is because of Kenny Everett. So really long story short, when I was about 6 or 7, my mum used to watch the Kenny Everett video show on, I think it started on the BBC, then went on to ITV. And I was fascinated by this guy. I saw all the silly characters and all the ridiculousness, and it was essentially, it was kind of like a naughty boys, like Monty Python was naughty enough, but it was like a naughty boys Monty Python, like the surreal skits and how things just didn't make any sense and just happened. And then I got onto his radio show, and that was it. I was hooked. I used to get his tapes of his shows from mail order from my dad's Daily Mail. Yes, my dad read the Daily Mail, still does. Don't judge him.
No judgment here.
It was, just the chaos. I was just addicted to the chaos. And I found myself, under the covers on the, the little tape deck, listening to his shows and, on the transistor when he was on Capital Radio and all that sort of stuff. And he is the reason that I'm doing what I do because, it led to initially a love of audio through radio and then through, production and, creating drama, creating comedy and, endless reasons why Kenny Everett is, God bless his, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Why I'm so grateful to him for existing in the first place.
Brilliant. Amazing. And that's a wrap. Thanks, Neal.
Yay.
The Entrepreneurial Journey Podcast. We're talking business and building a culture that's kick-ass. Where we make it happen. Grab your seat, let's have